Back in December of 2008 in LA, Steve Quayle was on the program, as he's been so often, and he brought us that pilot anonymously. Pilot did not want his name disclosed, and he talked about this very bizarre story of how he flew this dead giant out to some base in Ohio.
Describe exactly what you saw.
Well, when we came up, basically came outside, we had a normal 463L pilot loaded down with what they told us was a giant.
He talked about this giant being 1,100 pounds, anywhere from 10 to 15 feet long, and it was killed. It was apparently shot somewhere in a cave in Afghanistan, but before it was shot, it lunged at several of our troops, our soldiers. It may have even gorged somebody. It was just a bizarre story.
Well, I'll get to that. The bottom line was there was a patrol that was dispatched in a very rugged, remote area in Afghanistan, 2002, looking for high-value targets. So the patrol is dropped off by helicopter. They do their thing. They're supposed to check in. They don't check in. The second check-in time comes in. It doesn't happen. Third one.
They call them rally points.
Rally points. And they never met any of the rally points. So everybody's going, were they all killed? Was it an ambush, a firefight? What's going on? A second patrol is dispatched, dropped off in exactly the same.
That's where our guy ended up.
Yeah, we'll call him a shooter. He's in the second patrol. The shooter's now in the second patrol, embedded with these guys. And they're following this GO trail. They're coming down in this very rugged area, looking for the lost patrol. And as they're coming down this GO trail, the shooter in front of him, he sees these like white fragment things on the ground, and he realizes it's bone, and also there's like meat attached to the bone.
There were bloody bones on the ground and torn up military equipment,
like the radio
gear that he recognized, but it was in pieces. And so, what's happened here?
So they're going wild animal. Were they butchered or something by Taliban? I mean, no one knows. So they come down the GO trail, and it ends in like this little plateau, like a ledge. And on the edge of the ledge, it goes down. It's a precipice, like 500, 600, 1,000 feet to the valley floor below. And they're sort of dispersed. Nothing's happening at this point. All of a sudden, out of the cave comes the thing of someone's nightmare. It's 12 feet. It's got a large spear, at least 10 feet tall, in its hand, a shield in the other hand. It's got flaming red hair. Later on, they counted the 6 fingers to this thing, 6 toes, double rows of teeth. And this thing is like ready to fight. These guys are absolutely petrified. Who wouldn't be? Can you imagine something 12 feet tall coming out of the cave, a nightmare that's not supposed to exist? All your training doesn't kick in, nothing. You're just stupefied. You're standing there, shocked.
All of a sudden, there's this really big dude standing in front of you, and actually up above them a bit. He was like on a ledge.
He's on a ledge, so it's even more pronounced.
So he was like looming over them.
Wow.
And he jumped down with this spear, and it was really adept with it. It was really fast. I mean, this is one thing that he told us many times. He said, I didn't expect the speed and agility because he said all of the CGI effects, and he mentioned this, that you see in movies of giants, they're always like kind of lumbering along.
Yeah.
That is not the way it was. This thing moved like a lance. It's like a 3-foot lance on a 10-foot pole, and the giant could swing around with this and bag you with the end of this pole as well. So he knew what he was doing and used to using it. The weird thing about it is, why has he got this ancient Roman shield? Right. I mean, he was using really ancient tools, and he was dressed in a way that was, very ancient.
Very
as well.
odd, very odd.
It was really strange.
So as the firefight happens, these guys are at the mouth of the cave. A giant comes out, and we could get into the way he sounds, but the part that always leaves me, and this goes back to where the shooter chokes and the shooter breaks down every time he tells the story. So they're dispersed, they're frozen, looking at this thing. One of the guys is named Dan. Dan breaks loose and he starts firing at this thing, at the giant. And this is where the giant moves with such speed and agility that it defies logic. How's this thing moving that fast? Before Dan can do anything, he's impaled. He's hoisted up on this petard, literally, in the air, one hand. And the giant, according to a shooter, isn't done. He's coming after more of them. At this point, the training kicks in with these guys. Someone, and the shooter thinks it might have been him, yells, shoot him in the head, shoot him in the head. And they just blast this guy's face apart.
Big guns. They had semi-automatic weapons.
308s, 50 cals.
50s, and basically shot the giant in the chest and in the head. in the face and actually blew the bottom part of the giant's face off, you know.
Which killed him.
Where they could look into it. And when the giant was laying on the ground, he told me, he said it was like looking into a cave because his head was so huge.
The eyes were as big as a man's
You
fist.
could see his teeth in there, but it was really kind of a mess after that happened.
Double rows of teeth.
But this was like, you know, a very smelly,
Wow.
you know, weird.
Had never had a shower.
Yeah.
And
Well,
regularly killed and ate human beings.
He was a cannibal.
Yeah.
There's no doubt
And
that the
all
giant
the
was a cannibal.
locals knew that.
Wow.
The locals knew that he was. Well, the pilot, when going back to the original interview
With Steve
on
Quayle.
George Norrie's show, the pilot said that the whole thing, the whole package with the giant, the pallet he was on, and the rigging to hold him down weighed 1,500 pounds. He said so the pallet and the rigging weighed, you know, about 400 pounds. So the giant weighed like 1,100 pounds by itself.
It's a really
And it
big
was
guy.
fast.
And he said it was like 12 feet long and kind of curled up, you know, and that's...
Out in the boonies, running around looking for high-value targets.
Correct. And we're doing those operations, and as we're getting into firefights, we're getting into different scrimmages, you want to put it that way, we would come back to the base and we started hearing this rumor about a unit that killed this, what they started calling this really tall person. At first I didn't think anything of it, and then come to find out that the person that they killed actually was 3 times the size of a man, had extra digits on their hand and digits on their feet, and had red hair. And a special unit had come in and wanted this target. Well, we'd heard that they had killed this thing inside a cave, or the mouth of a cave. And it was common knowledge among the military to hear this.
And when you
It is.
our contact said 2002 is when they shot this 15-footer or taller, and you're now in this, you know, in the service around 2005. This word has gotten out, and what I find interesting here too is that if you're going to create a hoax, I get that, but you got details: 6 fingers, red hair, double rows of teeth, 6 digits on the toes, and of course that brings it right back into what we hear about in the biblical prophetic narrative, specifically the
And even going to Iraq myself and being near Haditha Dam and seeing the prisoners underneath the dam, and the prisoners would scream and there'd be this awful feeling underneath the dam, and then later finding out in the Bible that angels locked underneath there, where it talks about it.
And this Haditha Dam is the Euphrates.
Is Euphrates,
And there's an
correct?
angel supposedly locked underneath the Euphrates,
Correct.
which is released in the book of Revelation. Bizarre. So you're actually at this site, and soldiers are being locked in prison underneath the Haditha Dam,
Correct.
and they're freaking out.
They were freaking out. They said they could feel it. In fact, the people who would guard them they would draw straws to see who would actually take them.
No one wanted to go down.
Nobody wants to go down. Going back to Afghanistan, we would hear these things. We would hear the locals talk about rumors of these giants.
What would the locals say? How would they talk about it?
They say that they lived in the caves and they would eat people, and
They were cannibals.
they were cannibals. And we, at the time, chalked it up to our United States as Bigfoot. And we realized that every culture had some kind of folklore, but to actually all of a sudden hear that a military unit had killed something.
Dan was dead. Okay. And Wyatt is a good man, probably one of the best men I know, now dead. Before I'd left, they were already starting what they call a 9-line, which is a medevac request. They're sending out a medevac request, then all of a sudden it's not a medevac request. All of a sudden we had a helicopter show up because, like I told you, it was a large precipice and a sheer drop. So the helicopter just came up from the drop. They had dropped netting, which is like cargo netting. It's like squares. We were told we had to bundle him up. And we get another bigger helicopter, but it's almost like a Jolly Green Giant used to look back in the day, that could get, you know, through this area. Because the mountains, you gotta remember, Chinooks could only go in certain places because they had enough lift. And so we got him on there. The thing was too big, we couldn't move it. It smelled worse than a skunk. A corpse that's been around for a while.
The hills of Afghanistan, how many troop members are you with?
We had 6 on my crew, and when we say hills of Afghanistan, for us, we did not fly into the wilderness. We actually flew into a base I guess this thing was transloaded out of the mountains by a CH-47. But I could see that it did have the 6 fingers. I remember taking my foot up and placing it up next to its foot, and it was extremely large. We estimated it at about 12 feet, give or take. What I can tell you is the weight of the thing. Basically, it was approximately 1,500 pounds when it was getting on the aircraft. Now, if you take away the pallet weight and all the rigging that we had to hold this thing down, we figured it was around 1,100 pounds.
Of course we're upset. That's a given, okay? We lost a very good guy. But add to that, you're discussing something that even in our after-action report, they're saying rewrite it. And we had to rewrite it the way they wanted.
How many fingers?
6 toes.
6 toes.
And the nails were weird because if you see somebody that ever has, I don't know what it's called, but it's
Like a fungus on
the nails, how they get pointy and they're like gnarly, that's what they look like.
Stationed or deployed to Qatar. It was a completely normal mission for us. We were not alerted for anything abnormal. It was in the middle of the day. I remember coming in, we opened the doors and unloaded the equipment that we had brought in, and then we were met at the aircraft by what we later on called the babysitters, but they kind of introduced themselves and said, hey, no cameras, nobody's taking pictures here, we're moving some high-value stuff. When the load got there, we're very, of course, curious to see what it was, because that's just the way you are when you're told that you're not allowed to have a camera. They say this thing had been dead for maybe a day or two, and it was basically a dead guy, and this guy was extremely large. When I say large, our pallets are basically, if I remember correctly, about 9 by 12 feet or so. This guy was laying in a fetal position on the pallet, so he filled the pallet. We estimated his size at approximately 12 to 10 feet tall. I did see his skin color. I was expecting somebody of more Arabic descent, being in Afghanistan and all. I know he was dead, but he was very pale, very white guy. We questioned the babysitters of, hey, where'd you get this guy? And some of the Army guys that were with him relayed to us that this guy had, I guess, been living up in the mountains next to a village where the villagers basically treated him like a god. I did infer that they were making sacrifices to this guy because they said they found bones of people. The giant supposedly, like I said, I was not there, supposedly killed the first team that they came across. He was extremely big and fast and agile for a guy that size. They sent up another team, and when the second team went in there to get him, supposedly he had already started to basically eat on the team that had been killed the first time. They then grabbed a helicopter, and the helicopter brought him down where we picked him up. After we loaded the Giant, it was just a standard mission back. We took him all the way back to Al Udeid in Qatar, where he was transloaded onto another airplane. I believe it was a C-17. I was done with my mission then. I got away from it. I was done. I did ask some questions later of, where it might have gone. And as the grapevine goes, it was probably taken back to the United States. And the words I heard were right pat. But again, I don't know. Several years after my deployments to Afghanistan, something very strange happened to me that is somewhat related to this. I was basically TDY to Kirtland Air Force Base, which is out in Albuquerque. I was out with my JAG at the time, and there was a Navajo Native American sitting basically in the restaurant that we're in. It was also a bar. It was actually Kelly's Brew Pub. And this Native American guy, out of nowhere, he was talking to us, very friendly guy, and out of nowhere, he asked me if I knew what a Native American sing was, and no, I didn't at the time. I do now because I looked it up. But he says, I have to sing for you, and he put his hand on me and started a Native American prayer, if you will. And I thought, wow, this is very strange, but it was cool as well. My My Jag that I was with actually took out her Apple iPhone and started to film it, and he stopped and said, no, not on film, not on film. And she put it away, and he sang the prayer, and here's where it gets very strange. He started talking about, did I know that there were giants out in the Sandia Mountains? And he said, they're out there in the mountains still, and the earth had swallowed them up. And he goes, watch out. He says, someday they're going to come back. They're going to come back. And he said something like, if I remember correctly, like the earth had swallowed them up, but soon the earth will spit them back out. And soon, he said soon.
You what, mate?